Hi, I'm Peter Fisk. The future starts here. Right now, right here, it's the future. And that's the kind of starting point, and that's the question which I ask every single executive today. How do you see that future starting right now? Because the challenge for every leader is to look forwards, not backwards. To think about how is that future emerging, how it's going to affect their business, but equally, how is their business going to affect the future? The real challenge is not to sit and wait. The real challenge is actually to shape the future to your advantage. You know, we live in a time of incredible change. The next 10 years will probably see more change than the last 250 years. You know, think about the last 250 years. The steam engine, how did that transform villages into towns and, rural industries into industrial manufacturing plants? Think about the telephone, the telegraph. How did it start to connect us in real time? The automobile, the aeroplane. How did it connect the world and cultures started colliding together? Think about the man on the moon. How did it change our dreams of what was possible? Think about the digital tsunami of the last 25 years. How did that lead to the point where now this indispensable smartphone is in our hands every moment of the day? But then think about all of that change and think about how will we see more change than that in the next 10 years? And how can you be part of it? How can you ride that change? And actually, what's recently happened in the world, the global pandemic of COVID-19, has actually accelerated that change more than anything else. And there's new winners and losers in this time of incredible shakeup. Winning companies who have really seized the opportunities of that change as people have shifted online, they've shifted to digital lifestyles, digital education, digital work, digital shopping. And we work and think in new, completely different ways, and we have new partners who we trust to support us. Amazon, obviously, $400 billion richer. But Eric Yuan has become an essential part of our lives. Zoom culture. He only created Zoom 18 months ago. He left WebEx. He created a more intuitive, simpler to use streaming service called Zoom. And he's $30 billion richer as a result. Lucky him. But things like Tesla this year became the world's most valuable car company. It's not just about cars. Tesla's mission is actually to accelerate the future of clean energy. And actually at the core of Tesla is batteries. Batteries which can power the electric cars to go ultimately 100 million miles. And so it's more than just a car. Or think about PayPal, peer-to-peer lending becoming a key part of payments. So Vento is really what's driving its growth. Or Peloton, being able to exercise at home, but at the same time be able to exercise with anybody around the world as a community of people. Or Disney Plus, it launched at the beginning of this year, and it achieved the same market penetration in that time as Netflix took 7 years to achieve. Incredible. But at the same time, there have been many losers in this time of shake-up. Think about highly established brands like Hertz, for example. But the challenge for Hertz was to change, but it didn't change. And as we moved on with car sharing and other forms of transport, Hertz still stayed at the airport and hoped that people would rent cars for a week in the traditional way. They didn't, and when the crisis came, it quickly crumbled. We also saw WeWork, the demise of the office sharing business earlier this year, accelerated by the shakeup. And obviously hospitality and transportation has had a terrible time. Live events, how do they kind of find a future? Well, they're starting to by fusing together with digital in different ways. And even companies like cosmetics companies, when we're wearing face masks, we don't need so much cosmetics, and clearly because we're not traveling, we don't need so much oil. So the world is changing incredibly fast, and there's no surprise that 57% of companies are typically born in a downturn. In that time of crisis, in that time of recession, in a time of shake-up, that's when new companies, new ideas, new innovations are born. And so the best companies of tomorrow are actually being created right now. So think about it. What are you doing to create that future which starts right here? Well, We live in a time which we call the fourth industrial revolution. Don't know if you've heard about it, but what does fourth industrial revolution really mean? Well, the point is really the connections between all of these technologies. It could be the connections between digital platforms, but also robotics and blockchain, 3D printing, IoT sensors. And then suddenly you can bring all of these kind of connected technologies together. They generate huge amounts of data, which becomes the oil, which gives personalization and the ability for them to become intelligent, if you like, artificially. But also they connect to humanity. They give us power to make smarter decisions or to lift incredible weights or to do things in fundamentally new ways. One example is Sushi Singularity. Sushi Singularity just opened in Tokyo. This is a restaurant where you can't just turn up, you actually have to book a week in advance. When you book a week in advance, they send you a DNA testing kit. Not just for COVID, but this is a kit which you spit into, you send back to them, and they will profile your entire genome, your entire body. They look at the foods which are best and worst for you. They'll understand your medical and health and wellness conditions. And then they will design the perfect sushi for you. Using completely natural ingredients, they'll 3D print the sushi on the location, and then you can savor it yourself. So fundamentally changing the way we think about the restaurant experience, truly personalized, not just to you in terms of your attitudes and your motivations, but your body and things which you don't even realize about you as well. So Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, he said it's not enough to keep stretching the old models which made you successful in the past. It's incredibly tempting to. We hate to let go of a model when we find success. But most companies are living by outdated models. Most people are living by outdated formulas, the things which made them successful in the past, and they keep trying to hope that they'll be successful into the future. But in a world which keeps changing, that's not necessarily the case. And so when Satya became boss, he said, let's hit refresh. Let's think in a fundamentally different way. And he used an incredibly simple tool to do that from a lady called Carol Dweck. And she said there's two types of people. There's people with a fixed mindset who will always kind of take the way in which they do things and they'll keep trying to make them better. They'll try to optimize them. Usually they kind of make them slightly better, but they end up having to work on the efficiency more than anything else. And then there's people with a growth mindset. People with a growth mindset are the experimenters, the innovators. They constantly want to move forwards. They want to try new things. Usually they fail, firstly, but they learn from that. And that allows them eventually to move forwards in new and exciting ways. So the question really in the world of Microsoft today is, do you have a fixed mindset, which is largely rooted in the past, or do you have a growth mindset, which is prepared to let go, which constantly moves forwards and explores that new future? Anne Wojcicki, she was an investment banker. She read a report. She found that data was the future of healthcare. And so she set about doing something about it. With funding, she set up a company called 23andMe. She reduced the cost of doing that DNA analysis from $9,000 down to $900 and eventually today to $99 to profile your body, to tell you everything which is right and likely to be wrong with you and how can you change it. She's now producing personalized medicines for the first time this year. She's providing advice in terms of how can you live a better and a longer life. So fundamentally changing healthcare based on data. So across the world, across sectors, we see huge change. And this future is really driven by a number of trends, or what I call mega trends. There's 5 which I think are really important right now. And those 5 are 5 things: the aging world, booming Asia, cognitive technologies which can truly think using the data and AI, dense living, so people clustered together in huge megacities, and then eco or environmental renewal. So moving from crisis to a more circular-based approach to society and the environment. So the question is, how can you be part of riding those 5 megatrends? How can they be, if you like, the waves in which you find new opportunities, you find new growth? and they inspire you to move to new places, new sectors even, to create a better future. The challenge for leaders is to be far-sighted in today's world. Far-sighted in terms of looking forwards much more than looking back, which is not easy because most of the time in business we look at what we have done. We look at the financial results of last quarter or last year. We look at the capabilities which we built up over time. We look at the things, the relationships which we formed in the past. And we hope all of that's going to lead us to a better future without doing much about it. Instead, we need to spend much more time thinking about where we're going, how we're going to get there, how we're going to shape that future in innovative ways to our advantage. Elon Musk. One of the great things about Elon Musk is he's a visionary and he's a great, great storyteller. If you think about his different businesses and the stories which he tells, we marvel at SpaceX. We marvel at the spacecraft setting off from their rocket launchers. We marvel at them landing again. And maybe they've deposited a satellite on the way. But that's not really the story. When I went to Hawthorne in California, SpaceX's factory, I asked everybody what they're doing. Every single person said, we're going to Mars. Because that's the bigger mission. That's the bigger purpose of SpaceX. It's ultimately to create an alternative civilization beyond planet Earth. Or think about Tesla. What is the future of transportation is really what drives Elon Musk. It's not about electric cars in itself. The mission statement of Tesla is to accelerate the transition to clean energy. And the most profitable business unit of Tesla is batteries. Batteries for powering our homes, powering our cars, powering our smart cities. And the batteries are the ways in which he'll accelerate the transition to clean energies. But if you think about that, and you think about driverless cars, electric cars, charging points, in the future we'll probably end up in a world where cars are run by networks in the same way as you don't buy a mobile phone from a mobile phone company, you buy it from a network provider. Probably you'll pay a subscription in the future in a similar way to a transport provider, a network provider. So in that network provider world, who will the key people be? Elon Musk hopes it will be him. So thinking about this future and how it will evolve and what are the changing business models are just as important as to what are the products involved in that. And there's so many opportunities to shape that changing future, which is really being accelerated right now. And ultimately, with the clean energy which he's developing, he's talking about the million-mile battery. Just imagine that, not having to charge your car for 1,000,000 miles. Well, it probably won't actually be your car by this stage. But this constant challenge to go further, to see bigger in terms of how can you change things and make things better is really what drives Musk. Ultimately, by changing your perspective, you can see more. By changing your perspective, by stepping up in some way, you can see more potential. You can see a bigger, better future. Things which seemed impossible, first of all, suddenly seem possible. Let's do a really simple experiment. I went to Google X, the new ideas business of Google, and they said the best way to imagine bigger things is to give yourself a 10 times challenge, not a 10% challenge. They call it the moonshot challenge. So think about your business. Think about having 10 times more customers or 10 times more revenue or doing things 10 times faster or 10 times less cost. And then think about, well, how could you achieve that? And then work backwards. And even if you end up with doing it 2 times or 3 times, it's better than 10%, which is normally what most of us are happy with in terms of progress. So by being able to change your perspective, you see new possibilities. Zhang Rumin, he's the CEO of Haier, the Chinese white goods company. He was talking last year. I was interviewing him for my new book. And he said, within 5 years, all of my products will be free. He makes more washing machines and refrigerators than anybody else in the world. And I said, well, how will you make money if you give it all away free? And he said, well, the future is not about products, it's about services. It's not about transactions, it's about subscriptions. It's about data and it's about personalization. Yeah, I've heard that before. What do you mean? I said. Well, actually what he said was, imagine a refrigerator. You've now got your hire refrigerator free from me. But now I'm going to manage the replenishment of your food into that refrigerator. Using smart sensors, I know exactly what you've got and I know when it needs delivering. So I can work with the retailer and I can manage the flow of new food into your home. Once I'm managing your food for you, maybe I can help you in terms of better nutrition or being able to make better meals. So cooking advice too. And likewise with washing machines, it's not just providing, washing powder, but it's providing, maybe advice on fashion or new clothes and becoming your wardrobe manager as well as your kitchen manager. So I see a very different future by just changing their perspective and thinking from the future backwards rather than from now forwards. So thinking about, like hire, imagine if your products were free. How could you transform your business? The challenge really is how can we use all of these technologies, exponential network-based technologies? That's the real secret behind all of these technologies. So be it in terms of digital platforms or be it in terms of big data or blockchain or 3D printing, how could they change your business? Because actually they're changing every single sector. Just take one of them, like education, for example. The biggest trend in education is peer-to-peer learning. Kids teaching each other. By learning together, it's much more fun. And actually, we all know that we learn more by teaching it. And so enabled by digital smartphones or TikTok or whatever it might be in this case, they're able to do things which never were possible before and to enhance the way in which they can do it. Jessica Tan, she's a great example of thinking bigger and thinking differently. She was the CEO of Ping An. Ping An is one of China's largest financial services companies. And she was tasked with saying, how can I actually grow the business in new ways? And what she said, well, a financial service company is basically just a platform. It's a transactional platform and you could do anything with it. So what she said was saying, well, let's move into a different business. And she chose, for example, healthcare. She's chosen a number of sectors, but healthcare is one of them. She created a brand called Good Doctor. And using the Ping An platform, she started offering digital healthcare. So today, 300 million Chinese subscribers go to Ping An whenever they feel unwell. They use artificial intelligence to diagnose whether they actually need help or not. If they do need help, they can have a video chat with a doctor remotely. And then if they do need help, if they need medicines, they can actually get the medicine couriered directly to them with a motorbike, or you can go to a vending machine in all major cities. If you need to go to a clinic or to a hospital, they have a network of 10,000 clinics and hospitals to support you. So, Ping An is a great example, Good Doctor is a great example of digital and physical merging together and how any business in one sector can actually move into a different sector and to use its assets in new and innovative ways. So think not just from today, but think from the future backwards. Stretch yourself, jump out to 10 years or even 5 years and think about what would you like your business to look like in 5 years' time? What would you like it to look like? That's the question, not what you think it will be. And then once you've defined the vision you'd like for your business, maybe with your executive team, then work backwards. If this is 5 years, what will we have had to achieve in 3 years? And if that's 3 years, what will we have had to achieve in 1 year? And then you can start to plan the transformation. But what's sure is that next year will be very different from this year. That old fixed mindset would take next year very similar to this year, maybe 10% better. But a growth mindset from the future back would actually next year or even tomorrow would be the first day of the future, working towards that new vision you're trying to get to. So future back thinking is really powerful and a good way of thinking about strategy and innovation. And Jim Snaber, he said to me, the real challenge for executives today is not to think about what happens next. It's almost too late. What you really need to be thinking about is what happens after what happens next. And within that, think about how human and technologies will merge together, how physical and digital will merge together, and how businesses can do more for the world, for society and the environment at the same time. We live a time of incredible shake-up, but incredible shake-up means incredible opportunities. So I have a new book, it's called Business Recoded, and it's all about saying, how can you really transform your business for this new world? But transforming your business actually starts with yourself and saying, do you have the courage to step up to create a better future? So instead of just thinking about a business which makes money, how can you have enlightened progress? Instead of just thinking about incremental growth, how can you be more futuristic, future back in your growth? Instead of just competing in existing markets, how can you become a market maker? You're creating new markets. Instead of just technologically driven innovation, how can you use human ingenuity, combining people and technology in new ways? Instead of just changing once your business, how can you build a portfolio of change when you become constantly transforming your business so you keep pace with the world of change, or even you're ahead of it? And how can you as a leader ensure that business is a great place to work, where businesses really thrive as living human organisms, places where really we can enjoy life and we can enjoy work at the same time? And for you, how can you not just be ordinary, but how can you be extraordinary in this world? So shape the future. Shape the future in your vision, not somebody else's. Don't wait for it to happen. Start now, because the future is here. Shape the future in your vision. Be bold and be brave and be brilliant. Thank you very much.